So, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from today. We are so glad you're here. Welcome to the September session of our HR webinar series brought to you by your trusted partner in public sector HR, CPS HR Consulting. Today, we're diving into harnessing AI for test development, presented by CPS HR's team of test development experts. Today, we have Licensure and Certification Manager Anna Costa. We also have Principal HR Consultant Alan Tomasetti, Senior HR Consultant Layla Mansfield, and we also have content contribution from HR Consultant Roxana Durbin. We've got an exciting session ahead, but before we jump in, here are a few housekeeping notes as usual. So today's webinar is being recorded. You will receive an email tomorrow with the link to watch the replay. You will also find the recording and slide deck on our CPS HR webinar webpage. Everyone is in listen-only mode to help keep our audio crystal clear, and we encourage you to please use the chat to connect and share ideas throughout the session. If you have any questions for our speaker, please drop them into the Q&A box and we'll answer as many as we can at the end, time permitting. Now, without further delay, I'm going to hand it over to our test development team. Take it away.
All right. Anna, this is you. We can get started.
All right, thanks for the introduction. As Marissa mentioned, we are going to be diving into a number of ways that we're using AI and the everyday practices that we encounter. So we're part of the licensure and certification team, and we collaborate very closely with our clients on a number of things, from job analysis, whether it's initial job analysis or a refresh, from item development, test development. We assist our clients in converting their programs from paper pencil to online testing, computer-based testing. We also help our clients get their programs accredited through third-party agencies. So there's a link to our website there, so you can check out more of the services that we offer. Yeah, happy to be here today. Happy to share some of this knowledge with you.
All right. Well, I'm going to kick us off. As mentioned, our agenda today is just to share with you the processes that we have used AI to streamline some of the test development lifecycle. So I'm going to share briefly just some basics and best practices, and then I will jump into some of the uses in the job analysis steps. Anna will then go over item writing or question writing and review, as well as test form assembly or exam form assembly. And Alan will finish us off with some coding of qualitative or open text responses. If we have time, we will get into the Q&A. If we run out of time, please do feel free to still post your questions and we will answer those as we can, or you can reach out to us. Marissa will share our contact information with you. Okay, so let's jump in. There are a variety of AI platforms. So the three listed here are the most commonly used. Here at CPS HR, we have a closed system. We have a license with Microsoft. So everything you'll see here today is with Copilot, because that is what we use. But it is important to know that depending on your goal, you may use different platforms or engines depending on what your needs are, because each of them have a variety of different strengths. And this all just kind of begs the question of, why do we use AI? Why is it a concern not only in HR, but across all industries? So we have found that it does create efficiencies. Anna will talk through some of those efficiencies with the item writing. I will as well in the job analysis. So by automating some of those tasks, it has freed us up to think more big picture, to think more strategically about our programs, about our client needs. So it really does create efficiencies. We are able to scale projects more quickly, creating some cost savings. There's a potential for some bias reduction. I'll talk a little bit about that in the item writing process. And then we've also kind of automated some of our candidate responses. So it has improved the candidate experience because they're getting responses more quickly from us. So just overall, it has created some efficiencies, not only in the test development piece, but in customer service in a variety of different aspects. If you want to learn more, CPS HR does have a few training classes, and we will send these links out if you would like to take more, learn more about AI across other uses. Okay. So, with everything in AI, there is what we call kind of this balancing act. So, you do get those cost savings, you get better quality items or questions. It's a better use of not only our time as the consultant, but also the subject matter expert time because they are not doing those repetitive type tasks. But with all of that, we do need to keep in mind some of those ethical concerns because this is so growing so rapidly and changing so often, the guardrails aren't quite in place. So it's up to us. We have to make sure that we are keeping in mind test security concerns. So if you're using an open source or an open platform and you type in your test question, that test question is then out there in the ether, I guess. So it is out there. So we really need to be concerned. Are we being fair in our use of AI? Are we holding ourselves accountable? Are we transparent? And do we have that data privacy concerns in mind with everything that we do? So we're balancing this. Everyone is balancing this right now until those guardrails are fully in place. And so, with that, we do want to ask you what are concerns do you have about using AI in test development? So, what are some of your concerns with that? And I'm just realizing I actually won't be able to see the the post. So, Alan, maybe you can read me some of those concerns.
Of course.
Yeah, because we had to switch gears a little bit. So we're doing type them in the comments, and Alan, if you have
Mhm,
any,
mhm.
share some of those.
Yeah, so we already have bias being mentioned, test security, accuracy of information or inaccuracy of information, copyrights, confidentiality, privacy concerns, sensitive information.
Yeah,
A lot of the things we've mentioned are on the negative side of the balancing act are a lot of the things that are holding people back.
yeah, yeah. So exactly, a lot of things that you're mentioning and are things that we have tackled as a group and as an organization. So we always go back to what is industry standards, and those things are changing all the time. So we oftentimes will use the Institute of Credentialing Excellence because we're building certification exams. They have set up not only a lot of white papers and webinars and trainings, but they also have a set of values and standards that we use as the core of what we're doing. There's also country specific, state specific laws and regulations, some just newly coming on board, and so we're always checking in. What are we doing? Is it still aligned with the current industry standards and values? And if you're working with a vendor, we do recommend that you reach out to them and review their specific data privacy and security measures. So, again, just this is just an iterative process of going in because everything is changing so rapidly. New things are coming on board all the time of checking in with industry standards. Then we embed those standards into our own organizational policies. So CPS HR has an organizational policy around AI use. We embed that into our employee onboarding and training, as well as our subject matter experts. So even the temporary people that are coming in to help us with our test development work, they are trained and onboarded with the AI policies. If we are using AI in our test development, we will mention it in a candidate information brochure, but we also try to create guidelines for candidates because everything is so new. There's there's a lot of gray area. Candidates aren't really sure. Well, maybe they should be. Is something cheating? Is this AI use? Is this study material? What is this? So we try to create those guidelines for candidates as well and make those things clear and make sure that we're updating those things as needed. And then, as with everything AI, there's always human oversight. So we check in, are we following our own policies? We audit our output, we do a bias and sensitivity review. And for everything test development activity related, it is SME or subject matter expert reviewed. So there's nothing that came from an AI chatbot, for example, that becomes a final product. It's always edited in some way. Um, Okay, so with that, I'm going to just go into the way that we have used AI in the job analysis. There are a variety of steps in a job analysis. I'm only going to touch on the top two here, but we have used AI in the other steps as well. It does a really great job of looking, data cleaning, creating Excel, creating documents. Alan will touch on coding. So if you have open text in your JAQ, it does a great job with that, and Alan will get into that. But just to touch on these first two pieces, for initial data collection and literature review. So if I was to conduct a job analysis for an electrician, I have no idea what the job of an electrician is, and I just want to know, where do I get started? What do I need to know? And so I asked the AI chatbot, what resources should I read? And this is the response that it gave me, which is excellent because that's what I would have done as an HR professional. I would have gone to ONET, I would have gone to DOT, I would have looked for specific electric codes. So this is exactly what I would have done. So it just told me what I would have already known, but that's good. It's doing what it's supposed to do. I then know that my job analysis is going to end in an examination. So I want to know, I want to have kind of a structure in my mind of what the end result may be. I want to know what are the underlying competencies before we even go down the job analysis step. What am I going to test on? What is important for me to know? What is important for my subject matter experts to know if the end result is an examination? So I asked this, if I was to build an exam, what should I test on to ensure that those that pass that exam have the necessary knowledge and skills to do the job effectively and safely? And at face value, these things make a lot of sense. Of course, they should test on electrical code, local building codes, wiring methods, blueprint, and schematic reading. That does sound right. So I could bring that to the subject matter experts and say, hey, what do we need to know about this? Should we be thinking about a practical exam along with a written exam? It just gives us a starting point to know potentially speed up the end point. I will note it did give me safety protocols as well. And for the context of this position, that does make a lot of sense. We want our electricians to use their, PPE accurately, be concerned with public safety. But I do want to note in the prompt, I did ask what knowledge and skills to do the job effectively and safely. And oftentimes, the AI is trying to give me what it thinks I want to hear. And so, because I said safely, it may have popped that safety in there because it thinks that's what I am looking for. So we always have a critical eye. Is this accurate? Does it sound right? Before I bring it to the subject matter experts. In this case, it that does sound accurate. Okay. So I've done my initial research. I kind of know where we're going to end up. I now need to develop a list of statements. So at CPS, we do this three different ways. We could either ask our subject matter experts to create a list of task and knowledge and skill statements. We could interview subject matter experts and then develop those statements on our own. And that's where Alan's piece becomes really helpful. Or we could develop, based on our initial research, an initial list of statements for the subject matter experts to react to. That third way is the most efficient way. We found subject matter experts are really good at reacting on what's wrong, what's missing. It's better to give them something to react to than giving them a blank page. So we often try to develop these statements on our own on our own research. So to speed this up, I asked the AI to develop these statements. And this was a very iterative process. So at first, I said, just give me some task statements for the job of a human resources professional. In this case, I am the subject matter expert. So I wanted to know, is it doing a good job? So I switched over to human resources. And it gave me 10 statements. They weren't written very well. They were not very thorough. So I refined my prompt. I said, okay, please search ONET. I said, please, any job descriptions you can find in any other resources, create me a list of 50 statements, and I added journey level human resources analyst so it was more specific to the role I was looking for. Prior, the statements were across various levels of resources professionals. And then I ended the prompt with this in bold because I know job analysis and the statements are written in a very specific way. I wanted to start with an action verb and I want the task to describe what is done, how it is done, and why it is done. And here's where we ended up. It gave me a list of 50 statements. I reviewed them with my subject matter expert eyes and they all looked accurate, but I wanted to know, where did it get these statements? And it got it from ONET, Indeed, and internal documents. And this piece is important. Because we use a closed system, it searched all documents at CPS HR. So I was able to very quickly tap into the expertise already present in my organization. I'm sure you work where one group is working on a very similar project and that knowledge fails to get over to the next group just because you work in different buildings, whatever it may be. But the AI was able to tap into that expertise across all of CPS HR. So that's a good sign. When I looked at the statements, I just pulled out one for an example. Here's the AI developed statement: administer employee benefits by processing enrollments and responding to inquiries to support workforce well-being. That sounds like a good statement. It's telling me why something is done and how it is done. Comparatively, if I was going to go do this myself and develop my own list of statements, starting with ONET, for example, I found a similar statement. It was administer compensation or benefits programs. So obviously not as robust, but it also conflated two tasks into one. Administering compensation programs is one task, administering benefits programs is another. So I would have had to done a lot more refinement if I started with ONET rather than starting with the AI prompt. All right. And then I asked it, okay, well, what was missing? And because in our internal documents, we have job analysis requirements listed, it knew that in my statements, I was lacking specificity in my tools and systems because that is a requirement of our job analysis. And it also knew that I was missing content areas. So again, very iterative process. Now I can go back and recreate that prompt. I can ask a new prompt, give me new tasks related to data privacy and ethics. So it sped this up quite a bit. And then finally, a last little bit that I'll touch on here is grouping the task and the KS statements into competency or knowledge domains, because the end result will be an exam plan. I wanted to know how well did it do with grouping the statements into those various competency domains. So I went back, we did a job analysis a couple years ago for building envelope technicians, so the folks that build the envelope around buildings. They're concerned with the things you see here: building science, air, thermal, moisture barrier. And we had developed, as part of that job analysis, 123 various knowledge and skill statements. And I wanted to know how well could it group those into the competency areas. So I asked the first part of the statement first: group these 123 statements. And it did, but the competency areas, the titles of those areas, the way that it grouped those statements was not appropriate for what I knew of the exam. I had just spent, some time with these subject matter experts. I knew what the reference material was, and it wasn't close to what an ending exam plan would look like. So then I added this piece here: fit all of the statements into 5 to 6 areas, including building science, air, thermal, moisture barrier, because I knew those were the key areas that we had been spending time talking about these areas. I knew the books that we were going to use as reference materials were touching on these areas. And it recategorized all the statements. It fit them into those into those buckets, and it did a really nice job. So when I compared what we did with the subject matter experts, which had taken a few hours, about a half a day, versus what the categorization of the AI, there was about an 80% overlap between the two. So it did what I asked it to do. It did it really well, about 80% of the time. It did add two competency areas, which I thought was really interesting. It added communication and documentation, and it added safety and installation. And yes, that's right, installation. So communication and documentation, I reviewed those statements in that bucket that it listed those statements, how it categorized, and they made sense to be there. That did make sense, but safety and installation didn't. Those statements didn't make sense. It appeared to be like a catch-all for the AI. So safety in of itself is its own competency area, and it is embedded into building science, air, thermal, moisture. So it didn't make sense to stand alone. And installation is its own thing as well. So those didn't make sense. And what I realized, it was because I asked it to fit the statements into 5 to 6 areas. So it gave me 6 areas. It's trying to give me what I want, um, even though I may not know what I want. And so in order to make it do what I wanted to do, I should have refined my question a little bit more. But overall, the time savings is tremendous. And I'm confident that it can do what I asked it to do, along with the subject matter expert review. And finally, I did ask, is there anything missing? And it actually didn't do everything I asked it to do. It did not group all 123 statements, but that is an opportunity for me to bring back to the subject matter experts. What is this statement? Is this statement really a part of the job? Do we need another competency area? So it did a great job with my test. Okay, I'm going to end there and hand it over to Anna to walk us through AI use in the test development.
All right. Hi again, everyone. So like Layla mentioned, and I'm sure you've heard time and time again, the what you get out of your AI engine is, largely due in part to the prompt, how you prompt it, what parameters you set up. And so it's really important that upfront that you include a number of elements to give you the best output. So make sure that you're targeting your audience or providing AI a frame of reference for who it is that you are, trying to derive this information for. What question type are you looking for? A multiple choice or open-ended? The level of complexity that you're looking for. Do you need simple recall from a reference material, or do you need AI to pull together information from multiple different areas and interpret that information? Are you looking for low level, high level, 8th grade reading level, graduate reading level? Does AI need to refer to codes or standards? You also want to make sure that you're specifying that you're looking for a clear and concise stem, only one correct answer, distractors or response options that appear to be plausible but aren't tricky, there's no content overlap, and that are definitively incorrect. All right, so here is a sample prompt that we just played around with, and it was for the development of items for a registered nursing exam. I asked AI to create a difficult multiple choice question that assesses knowledge and skills required for registered nurses in California, and the item should include everything that I have bulleted there. So 4 response options, only one correct answer. That's okay, Layla, you can move forward. And so this is what AI provided me. It might provide you something like this. And so some of you mentioned in the chat that, the items are terrible, poor quality and whatnot. And I agree. We've had really good items, be developed, and we've had really terrible items. And I think that's, the criticality of having SMEs involved is because you cannot take anything that's generated from AI at face value. So with an item like this, you may want to, this would likely take SMEs an hour to an hour and a half to develop. The full stem, with the 4 response options. Those of you that develop items, coming up with the correct answer is very easy. Coming up with the plausible distractors is what takes an incredible amount of time. And so to be able to provide your SMEs something like this to react to makes the process go a lot faster. And so at that point in time, they can vet, whether the correct answer truly is the correct answer. they can, you know, determine whether or not B, C, and D, for instance, are definitively incorrect, or if there's any partial truth to them, how can they be rewritten? They can determine if, you know, what's written in as part of the STEM, the stimulus information, if that extraneous information doesn't need to be omitted because the item is too easy to remember. So are candidates going to remember the question but simply because it's talking about a 72-year-old patient with heart failure, or, you know, are they going to, you know, really focus on what is being tested in the question? So all of those things, you know, AI can do for you beyond just generating the item. Layla touched on this. You can ask, can you go back actually, Layla? You can ask AI, you know, where did you get this information from? So provide me references of where you derived this information from. You can ask it for the rationale for the correct answer. Why is the correct answer the correct answer? Things like that. All right, next slide. All right, so beyond generating the items, if you want to take it a step further, you can continue with follow-up prompts to review and refine those questions. So you can ask AI to simplify the language or analyze the item for potential biases. You can ask that the question be modified to include more or less nuance for, you know, deeper meanings. You can ask if the question, you know, aligns to specific code, specific regulation, specific competency. You can also ask AI to generate variations of the same question, and this can be utilized for a number of different reasons. So if you're starting from scratch and you need to build your item bank, you want AI to generate multiple different variations of the question, so that you can either build your bank up or you can choose from the 3 or 4 that are generated. SMEs can review, refine, and create one good question. Also, if you have good performing questions, you already know they're performing well, and you want to clone them, you can utilize AI to, you know, clone the question or create, you know, variations of the questions for different clinical conditions. Alrighty. So additional ways in which we're utilizing AI is to create the initial drafts of minimally acceptable candidate profiles. For those of you that conduct standard setting processes, you know how tricky it can be to work with subject matter experts. And so we can utilize AI to provide estimated difficulty levels for the questions. AI can be utilized to flag items that have too similar of content, or we can match items to exam plan domains. So in this particular example, I drafted a prompt for AI to draft a MAC profile for registered nurses in California. That specifically would be used as part of an NGOF training or an NGOF session with subject matter experts. And I asked it to tailor the competencies against, you know, what's in the NCLEX exam plan. So it generated this. So you've got, you know, that first sentence is kind of your frame of reference, and then it included the knowledge and skills that a registered nurse is expected to possess, clinical judgment, as well as professional behavior that they're expected to exhibit. So again, something that would normally take subject matter experts an extraordinarily long time to develop, this is now something that is generated in a matter of seconds. And you can then have them react to this, you know, refine, improve for whatever your purposes are. Another use of AI, as I mentioned, is flagging items of similar content. So here we have the original prompt and then a follow-up prompt, and the end result is you can see that AI has flagged question 17 and 26 as having similar content, and provided a similarity score that's rather high, and the reason why it thinks that those 2 questions are so similar. So again, you would want to take this to your subject matter experts, have them review review to confirm that they are in fact too similar, and then the determination can be made as to whether or not these two items should not be used on the same exam form together, or rather they should just be, spaced far apart from each other, or if they're equivalent enough, can you put one on one exam form and the other question on another exam form? Okay, so this was a fun activity. So I found some questions, 32 questions, in fact, from the NCSB and test plan booklets, all online. This information is all online. So these are the 32 questions, formatted them into Excel. So I've got the 32, the question is in column B, and then response A, B, C, D in the other columns. Next slide. All right. So I gave it the prompt. You're right. Here are these 32 questions. Help me determine what the correct answer are for these 32 questions. I already know what the answers to the 32 questions are because they're already provided online. I wanted to see what AI could do. And so you can see the highlighted column is what AI provided me. Of the 32 questions, it actually answered 31 of them correct. The 32nd question, it got incorrect. So again, you would want your SMEs to, confirm all of this information. It's possible with rules and regs constantly changing that what used to be the correct answer for number 32 was one thing before, but once a code or rule or regulation changed, the correct answer changed. And AI, it's possible that AI is so on top of things that it discovered that the correct answer, it got the answer incorrect, but it might in fact be correct. So again, where you need SME input for this. All right, so then my follow-up prompt is, all right, using the domains listed below, and these are all domains from the actual NCLEX exam plan, I asked it to assign the questions to the most relevant domain, and that is what it produced in the yellow highlighted column. Again, something that would normally take subject matter experts a very long time to do, parse out, especially for items where they kind of straddle two different domain areas. This is really helpful, to have AI just definitively make a decision about where it fits best. And then obviously you need your subject matter input to determine ultimately where it belongs. All right, apologize for the long prompt, but essentially I am trying to set the parameters for AI to determine the level of difficulty for each of these items. So as I mentioned previously, if you've worked with SMEs, you know how tricky it is to train them on a standard setting process and assigning ANGOF ratings. Oftentimes they tend to inflate or overestimate how easy an item is and overestimate how well candidates are going to do on an item. And so got a prompt here with all kinds of parameters, and then we'll look at the next slide to see that it actually provided an ANGOF rating for each item. Now, what I like about this is that you can, kind of have this in your back pocket when you're going into standard setting panels. Have this in your back pocket, and you can see how subject matter experts actually rate the items to see how it compares to what AI assigned. And then once, if these items ever see the light of day and actually make it onto an exam and you collect performance data, you can compare how the item is actually performing with what the subject matter experts estimated versus what AI estimated. And next, I asked it to create two distinct forms, Form A and Form B. Out of the 32 questions, I just wanted 10 unique questions per form. And I asked it, ensure that these 4 things are also adhered to. So next slide. All right, so then this is what it did. I color coordinated just to make it easier for you all to see. It actually selected, 2 items from the various different categories up until the very end where the last 2 categories didn't have 2 items to devote to those domains. So each exam, so exam form A is on the top. It has an overall average ANGOF of 70, and then the form B also does as well. Again, starting point for everything, like all of this is just for discussion and absolutely needs SME input. Next slide. All right, and the last way that you could possibly utilize or leverage AI is to randomize the order of your answer choices, so your A, B, C, D, so that your correct answer is constantly appearing in a different position. This may help to prevent pattern predictability. We also look at randomizing the sequence of items to prevent clustering. So sometimes your exam generator may cluster items based on topic, based on difficulty, so easier items first and then harder, or where the correct answer is placed. So it may, cluster all the A's, any of the items with A's, are grouped together. So by utilizing AI, you can kind of balance the distribution of the content in your exam. So I know I breezed through all of that very, very quickly, but those are just some of the ways in which we are kind of exploring and experimenting with AI and test development. And now I'm going to kick it over to Alan to talk about how he uses it with qualitative data.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Costa, and thank you as well, Dr. Mansfield. We're going to pivot now to talk about some qualitative coding and with AI. And the example I'll use, I'll go over in a second, but the general concept that I'm trying to lay out over this next 10, 15 minutes should work with any set of text data that you have, that you're looking to categorize, code, work with, and extract themes and categories of statements from. So imagine that you've just finished conducting a dozen focus groups and 50 one-on-one interviews, and you have transcripts turned on all of them. And now you have mountains and mountains of quotes and notes and texts that you have to go through. And you were a good researcher, and you set yourself up for success, and you made a coding scheme where you were responding to different themes and categories and ideas as the interviews were taking place. You put it all together and you presented it to your supervisor, and they asked a question, and you hadn't thought about that ahead of time, and you have to go, what do? You have to go back to the data. And the old way of doing that would require you to start from page 1 and think about what you're coding for now and read page 1 and page 2 and person 3 and person 4 and person 5 until you've gone through everything to look for that one new code. And then you present it to someone else and they ask you another question and you hadn't thought of that one yet either. And you have to code it all over again. If you were like me, that's a real life situation I've lived in. I've had to go over 117 articles more times than I care to count for my dissertation. It wasn't fun. And this is a lesson I've carried through to today, and that I put into practice with interviews and focus groups that I'm working with nowadays in real life. So the new method that can be used is using AI for this. And with an AI engine approved by organization, that code book or coding scheme that you already have together, the notes and the transcripts from all the interviews or focus groups that you had, or if they're statements or comments or collections of facts or task statements, whatever the text is, have that handy and have it formatted in some sort of ordered fashion. Specifically, you need to provide the AI engine with some way to identify the information that you then can incorporate and use in your own analysis. So you can include page or line numbers on your pages. You can make a cell sheet with rows, but however you do it, you want to make sure it's formatted in a way that you can find what you need to find. You can find what it's pointing you to. And so here's just a real simple a data set that I use. This is literally the file that I used for a lot for the second example I'll show you, a little bit for the first example. And it's just a column A with numbers 1 to whatever, and column B with notes. These notes do apply to various questions, and I have another spreadsheet that tells me who they are and what question I was asking at the time, but this is just the notes from that conversation. And on the next slide, we'll start a video that will take you through a whole bunch of stuff, but the prompt that's going to be hard to see is asking for the AI engine to provide the statements that correspond to a category. And so looking at all the information I provided it, I prompted to tell me what matches a category that deals with leadership helping make connections. So please let us know if you cannot hear anything over chat, but we'll now start this video. Just watch this process live happen. And answer questions at the end. Okay, let's jump right in. We have our AI engine that is approved by our organization. We have our coding scheme. We have our interview notes and transcripts, and we're ready to go. The first thing, as always, is the prompt. I've pasted it in. The 3 hashtags or pound signs is a best practice divider between a prompt and the content. Always asked for the code being used, and the prompt itself is from only the following list, provide the statement numbers for all items that address or touch on the idea that desire for leadership to help build relationships between departments. Let's start by just going for it. Aww. Womp womp. We notice right away that there's a character limit of 128,000, and we exceed that. 128,000 is a lot. I believe the work version of Copilot has a limit of 16,000 or so. That's something to keep in mind. I will also show you a better workaround to the character limit as part 2. In case you're unable to upload a document, which is what the workaround will be, the option left is to truncate your data. By truncate, I mean take a portion of one at a time. You can cut it in half, you can cut it in thirds, it doesn't matter. For the data that I'm using today, I originally included summary notes from the person conducting the interview or the focus group. I went ahead and removed those, and let us see if we are now under the character limit. It appears that we are, and let's see what we get. While it is thinking, and sometimes you'll know it's thinking by this color dotted line ribbon, other times you'll just have to look and see if there's a stop symbol or something else down in the prompt box. However, to save time and your all sanity, I will pause often when it is thinking so that we can skip that downtime together. The analysis has, or the process has finished, and we can see they've listed 10 statements that match or the theme that we asked for. One of the reasons I asked for the code is this. It'll show you often, at least in Copilot, it'll have an analysis with the drop down. Other engines might show this information a different way. Most engines are fairly good about using comments to tell you what's happening. So you don't need to know that open with user message.txt encoding whatever means what it means, because it'll tell you that it's loading the full text. Then we're defining the pattern of matching, and then we're defining keywords. Okay, so here is, and I showed more words, I can scroll sideways. Here is what I wanted to show you. Here's the important part. Define keywords for desired sentiment. Leadership, leaders, guidance, direction, relationships, collaboration, departments, division, communication. We're not the rule creators, rule followers. Those are the exact words that the engine tried to find within each statement. If something's missing from there, you know that they didn't look for it, and you can adjust your prompt to specifically address something that's been omitted. Now, let us quickly pivot to a second method of using an AI engine to code and categorize qualitative text data. In this method, we will be sharing a document, an Excel file in this case, with the AI engine. The prompt this time will inform it to use the uploaded document and to provide the statement numbers for all items that address issues dealing with employment hiring and retention. In Copilot, there's a plus sign within the prompt field window where you can upload files and documents. That might be in a different location in other engines, or you might need to have a paid subscription in order to access those features. Once the file is loaded, you're able to launch your prompt. Here, like before, we have an output of statement numbers and the code that was used to generate or locate those statements. We have terms like RTO, return to office, employment, overwork, morale, telework. I don't see anything, I don't see tenure or leave, for example. So if you wanted, you could modify the prompt by clicking the edit button and actually include the additional terms that you'd like to have searched for. In this case, I will add in tenure and leave and then rerun the prompt. The output is quite similar. Don't know if there's more statements or not, but we can verify in the code that tenure and leave are now included. This process can then be repeated for other themes and categories that you'd like to examine. Once you're done re-examining your data, you might want to be able to access it more freely and use information in other analyses and reports. One option then is to ask your AI engine to export the findings in Excel format, including both the statement text and statement number. If you do not ask for Excel format, you might get it in a .txt file or something else. If you don't ask for this statement text or number, one or the other of those might be omitted. Copilot has now created an employment-related statements.xlsx file for me to download and open. And with that, my overview has concluded. I hope that you have learned that a little bit of time and effort can save you a lot of time and a lot of effort when dealing with large amounts of text. The process here is demonstrated with transcripts and interview data. or focus group data. However, the same process and techniques can easily be adapted for identifying groups of test items, groups of job analysis statements, or to analyze reference material for areas from which different contents can be pulled. I thank you so much for your time, and I will now hand it back to the real life Alan. Thanks, Digital Alan. So, because of the way I was recording my screen, it would have been difficult to show you the Excel file that was outputted within one shot. So here on this next slide, the one that is showing now, you can see actually just the output that I had, where column 1 is the statement number again, and column 2 is the statement itself. Note that I didn't include very detailed formatting instructions, kind of the opposite of what Anna did with her prompts. She wanted something specific in the end. I just wanted an output, right? So the more specificity you provide in the prompt, the more directions and structure and clarity that you specify, the more control you're going to have over the output. So it's a give and take there as well. So after you've repeated this process and you're done, and you use this, you can, like I said, you can use the same process, the same feature, or the same steps to work with any set of text-based data, any groups of coding, of clumping of information. And I encourage you to explore that analysis feature, explore that code being used to understand what's actually happening within the search parameters, what's actually happening when it's looking at your data. Make sure that everything's included, make sure it's looking in the right spot. And taking that extra look in can help you improve your output, help you improve the efficiency of your processes, and make sure that nothing's missing. Thanks.
Okay, with that, I do have a few minutes for some questions. I'll stop sharing so I can see the Q&A. Our last slide, and we'll send this out to everyone, has our contact information. So feel free to reach out if we don't get to your question today, or if you think of something else, do feel free to reach out to us. We'll send out our contact information and some links that we had shared throughout the presentation. So let me stop sharing so that I can see the Q&A. Or Marissa, if you see, I don't want to take from you. Okay, let me see. Can I see the Q&A? Maybe I can't.
Well, let's see. We have a couple coming in on the chat.
Okay.
Nothing outstanding in the Q&A.
Okay.
Before we get into the questions really quickly, I'll go ahead and do my wrap up. So thank you all for that fantastic presentation. I'm sure everyone here is coming away with many great tips and tricks to use in their own organizations. So thank you for being here. So just a few quick reminders to everyone. Yes, the session was recorded. You will receive an email tomorrow with the link to the recording and the slides. And you can always find it on our website at www.cpshr.us. At CPS HR Consulting, we're proud to support public sector agencies with services like recruitment, training, test rental, classification and compensation, compliance, and much, much more. If you're looking for a strategic HR support, we are here to help. And finally, we'd really appreciate it if you could complete the short survey that will pop up at the close of this session. Your feedback helps us make future webinars even better. So thank you again to our presenters, and thank you to all of you for spending time with us today. Be sure to join us October 15th for our webinar on inclusive leadership, and we hope to see you there. I'm posting the links now. And I still don't see any questions in the Q&A feature.
We have one from a while back about the correlation between AI Angoff ratings and SME Angoff ratings. I can tell you that it's always going to vary. Yeah, it's always going to vary depending on your subject matter experts. But then again, I have a hard time sometimes having faith in the subject matter expert's initial opinion with certain groups. There's some groups that I know their expertise level is so superior that they are the best in the best. They have an impossible time putting themselves into somebody else's shoes. So I'm looking for anything, any nugget I can grab onto to get them to reconsider, to get themselves to take a step back, to any information that I can get for them to try to remember what it was like when they first started out versus doing the job longer than I've been alive. So it's going to vary. It might not, as Anna said, it might not be that high. But at the same time, you're trying to just generate a conversation, and and if you're using this method, you're trying to generate content. You want to address the Angolf ratings and have a conversation and work with the subject matter experts to find a different way to think about it than what you've been doing presently.
Thanks,
Hopefully
Alan.
that helps with you.
And this was not asked, but I failed to mention it during the presentation, but I thought it was just an interesting thing to check out. So when you ask for AI to generate your questions, oftentimes, the questions may not make it to the, final state, like you may decide to throw them out. And so you can also, reverse engineer that, and you can throw the question back at AI and say, this is a flawed question. Why is this a flawed question? What's wrong with it? How can you improve it? What does it not align with? And things like that. And then take another stab at, a new iteration of the item so that you can salvage what has been developed.
That question from Andrew is a great one. What was the biggest mistake that AI made that would have been a problem if you didn't intervene? And so like the biggest mistake is it came back with no results several times. Like it would show results, and then I would like mess up the recording and redo it, and it would say there's no results. And then I had to throw that recording out and do it over, right? So sometimes it would just literally take a day off, take a prompt off, and just be like, nope, nothing's there, right? And you have to go back and just try again, which if you aren't familiar with your data, if you accepted that as accurate, then that could be very, very problematic, right? So knowing that no match was a wrong answer was a very valuable knowledge for me to have before I started. Anyone else have any funny or
I
good
think with
examples of that?
people have already mentioned the item writing quality can be really, I have found we'll ask it to write 10 questions and it's 10 questions all reworded this, but it's the same question and they'll be inaccurate. So asking, like Anna mentioned, ask where did you find this correct answer is always good. Where'd you find the distractors? Why are the distractors wrong? Because I have definitely seen that it's just guessing, making things up, hallucinating, as they say. So I've seen that and definitely want human oversight on
Mhm.
any item generation. And then I think Andrea asked another question. To identify
Mhm.
bias in the question stem. So we can reverse that and ask the AI, is there bias in this question? And it gives a pretty good response. Um, I don't know. We always bring that back to the subject matter experts. So they are the final say on, is this bias to a certain group of people doing this job? I don't know, Anna, if you have things to add to that.
No, I mean, I think you covered it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Brian.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The distractors are
The
the worst part,
distractors are always the hardest
but
thing to come up with.
for humans too, though, right? That's the humans hardest. But I think with making it provide references for the distractors helps a lot. That way, it's not making it up. And having it defend them. On any other prompts or adjustments you saw that helped it make a slightly better distractor? I think you used plausible and had some other nice terms in your prompts.
I mean, I always ask for what appears plausible, but is definitively incorrect. Yeah, I mean, the distractors are the hardest thing, but it takes me so long to generate them that sometimes it's worthwhile to utilize AI distractors as a starting point. Oftentimes we find that, humans with the experience are the ones that can come up with the better distractors. It just takes them so long.
Mhm.
So.
Um, to the question of best platform or engine for accurate and effective test development, unfortunately, we want to stay within a closed system when working with test items that are actually for clients that are going to go live, that are going to be out there in the world. So that limits us to our organization's enterprise subscriptions, which is the Copilot. We have done work for one client. Layla, did you try a couple different platforms when we worked or when we were writing questions that were able to be more public, that were based on public resources?
I may have early on, but just overall, I've done some testing, as we all have, testing across different platforms to see how accurate they are. I think they are at least starting to be really similar. But I'm sorry, Alan, I can't remember if I did that or not, but I don't
Mhm,
remember. If I did, I don't remember it being that different.
mhm,
I
mhm.
do remember it wasn't very good. So, so a lot of refinement happens with those items.
Marilyn, to answer your question, so when we write multiple choice questions, we want only one correct answer, and then the other response options we call distractors. And so we want them to look and feel plausible, but they have to absolutely be incorrect.
And I believe that's all the questions I'm seeing in chat. If there are any we missed, feel free to retype them. If any that come up, go ahead and enter them in. Otherwise, I think we're headed towards a wrap up. Oh, and we got a couple questions in the
Oh,
Q&A area. Thanks so much for that,
more of
Marilyn.
those.
Do you have experience with different levels of chat GPT, free version, paid version? More information, deeper dive into information provided. Have you used Grotz AI? Platforms you recommend avoiding? Personally, I really like Copilot because even the free version will give reference links. And that's one of my biggest things. As a scientist, I like references, I like citations, I like knowing where information comes from. I like being able to go back to that primary source and double check or do the analysis myself. And that's something that Copilot does naturally. Any paid version is gonna give you more control. A lot of times the paid version is necessary for conducting internet searches. So that's also going to give you more information and be a deeper dive into you specifically. Anyone have thoughts on any of those remaining questions?
All right, with that, sorry,
Oh.
go ahead, Anna.
No, I was just gonna say I use Chat GPT for my personal reasons all the time. Draft me this. I've got these three things in my refrigerator. Come up with what I should make for dinner tonight. A girlfriend of mine, needed a nice, kind but firm way to break up with somebody. Draft a response to somebody. My family, we planned a trip to Yellowstone, and I asked ChatGPT to plan a week-long itinerary of where to go, where to stay, where to eat, and I did not deviate from the itinerary. I mean, I kind of looked into everything to confirm that the restaurants were good, the hotels were good, and the suggested activities were good, and there isn't a thing I would change about that itinerary. So ChatGPT I have found very, very helpful for personal reasons, but within our organization we have to work within the confines of Copilot. 4 new messages. My wife is so cute. How do I let her know that? That's really cute.
Yeah.
Call my ChatGPT bestie.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you.
With that, we're gonna go ahead and get off air. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you to our presenters. We will see you next month. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.
Take care.